And welcome to Express Media's National Young Writers Month. I'm Fiona Dunn, the creative producer of Express Media, and with us today for tonight's Hangout is Zoë Norton Lodge and Emily Meller. So Zoe is a writer and performer who has worked in radio, theatre and television. Since 2012, she's been part of the Chaser team on her various TV projects and is a writer and presenter on ABC's The Checkout and a panellist and writer on The Media Circus. She's co-creator of the hit storytelling club night. I completely messed that up. She's co-creator of the hit Storytelling Night Story Club, and to be frank, it's a very hard few stories in that sentence, which is both a live comedy show in Sydney and a late-night TV show on ABC2. Her short stories are widely published in Australian literary journals, including Going Down Swinging, Seizure, and Best Australian Stories, and her debut fiction novel, Almost Sincerely, is out now through Giramondo. Talking to her tonight is Emily Meller, who is a writer and editor who has just finished a double degree in Law and Writing and Cultural Studies at UTS. Her writing has appeared in The Lifted Brow, Overland and many other places, and she is an editor of Seizure's Flashes and the 2015 UTS Writers Anthology. So when we begin tonight, you can join the conversation and ask questions by tweeting using the hashtag NYWM15 on Twitter. And don't forget to check out the program online, get to a VoiceWorks launch near you, and set yourself a goal for National Young Writers Month. I'll hand it over to Zoe and Emily now to take it away.
Hi everybody. So I guess I'll just start out with the most obvious question, which is, Zoe, that was a really long list of your experience with writing. So how did a novel come about, and how was the kind of transition to writing a novel?
Well, I don't think it's really a novel, so I haven't quite achieved that goal yet. It's more a collection of short stories, which is, frankly, was a lot easier for me because that's sort of more my wheelhouse and my experience. So I guess for me it came out of both studying writing at UTS and doing a lot of stories, and also mainly from running this night story club, which is basically a storytelling night with a kind of a comedy bent that I started with my friend Ben Jenkins, and our goal was to kind of find a way to get stand-ups, I guess, to write their stuff down and make it, into a pretty narrative. And yeah, so we've been doing that for about 6 years. So that's kind of where I guess definitely where the nuts and bolts of this book began.
Yeah, and with all that live storytelling, reading Almost Sincerely, your voice is so clear throughout it, and I think that adds so much to the humor. What was the process of kind of taking it from being almost a performance piece to a written piece, or did you find it a fairly easy thing to translate?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I definitely relied a lot on. I had a great editor, Alice Grundy, who helped me a lot through that process. I think you kind of get away with murder when you're reading something out loud. Like, you really can sell your song. Like, you can really, and also story clubs at a bar, basically. Well, it's at a theatre, but everybody's had a couple of drinks, and there are 6 stories, and people are there to kind of have a good time and stuff like, does your plot really make sense? Does it have an ending? Did you describe this properly? They're not such huge concerns, obviously much bigger concerns in a book. But I really enjoyed it. I certainly learnt a lot about what I wasn't doing in Story Club with my writing because nobody looks at my Story Club stuff. I just write it and then I just say it and then it's over. Yeah, it was like some things worked really well, I think, and others needed quite a lot of massaging to kind of concertina them out and flesh out the plots and write out the scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. And so you've done a lot of sketch writing and that kind of thing as well for The Chaser and their various projects, including The Checkout. How do you find, in terms of creating something that is funny, how does it compare having to write a sketch versus writing a short story? Do they overlap at all?
That's interesting. Like, they in a lot of ways they don't overlap. Like, writing for The Checkout is very much more like a job, and in a great way, just in the sense that, like, you have a particular, quite defined goal. Like, you want to inform people about something that you know about, and you want it to be known language and translating, you know, and the way I write in my stories is very different to the way you have to write for the checkout. Like, I love me a tortured metaphor. I love all that sort of stuff. I love playing with language. I love experimenting. I love not what you do on the checkout. Like, you want to make sure it's like, we've made this quite clear. Is to have to sort of be able to have a writing job where you have these different tasks and you kind of set about them, and it's like this.
Yeah, definitely. So how did so you started writing Almost Sincerely in 2012. How did that kind of come about? So you did your writing course at UTS, and then what happened from there? Where did you take it?
There was a gap, actually. So I finished in 2010, and after that I went to work. I worked for a theatre company for a little while. I did various things like that. I ended up working, you know, just doing a job working at the captions department of the ABC. And then I ended up getting my first job with the Chaser, which was like really my job was basically to watch a pile of news, like 10 different news programs a day, and try to find fuck ups basically and funny things and whatever. And so it was towards the end of my first job with them that I got offered a contract with, and they approached me, which was really lovely. And they actually did initially approach me to write a novel, and I was like, oh God, that seems hard. So I decided to do this instead, which, yeah, so here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, and it's such a fantastic book if anyone hasn't picked it up yet. And it's all based around Annandale, which is where you grew up. So was that something that you'd wanted to focus on, or you found that you were focusing on in your stories? Or what was the decision to look at just kind of this one particular area and all the hilarious things that happen there?
Well, I guess it's because I always wanted to write, like, my stories have always been about me, and obviously there's some stories in the book that aren't strictly speaking set in Annandale, but the idea of talking about a really, really boring suburb, like, there's nothing to it. Like, it's not, and it's not that it's like a downtrodden, you know, out the back of nowhere place. It's not fancy. It's not interesting. It is what it is. But I do think I kind of wanted to make it a bit of a character in the book, like just a sort of little suburb shuffling along that's kind of evolving a little bit. So yeah, it just seemed like a nice way to kind of pull the stories together and give them all a bit of a backbone.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned you tried to make it a character in the book, because that was actually one of my questions, because Annandale feels like a complete character throughout the book, almost kind of like an angry old neighbor. Maybe that's because that's what one of the stories is about. But kind of in the decision, yeah, when you're trying to find things that are going to work for a story, what is it that you think makes it funny enough or notable? Because some of them just seem like common experiences, but somehow they're so like in such detail or just so funny when you've told them. So what's that process?
Yeah, I think that when you're choosing to just draw on, like, okay, so like as I mentioned, we did start doing Story Club a long time ago. So when you first started, it's like, oh, I've got that great story of that time that crazy thing happened to me, and maybe I've got 4 or 5 of them, and then like you hit this kind of horrible point where you're like, oh my God, there's nothing else interesting has happened to me at all. I've gone with all the, you know, you've kind of like you've dispensed with all the actually exciting stuff that you then have to try to find exciting things in the completely mundane. And I think for me that process was just about being like all I can offer is my own experience of this. And I think if you were willing to be open enough and yourself enough to kind of really just give a little piece of yourself away, then when you discuss any meal out of it, even if it seems like there wasn't much there, you just, pare it back to its basic events.
Yeah, definitely. So this is, yeah, when did you kind of know you were funny? Because to me it feels like a lot of these stories are the kind of thing maybe you might tell to a group of friends and they're all laughing and they're like, aha, so funny. And then, yeah, it really takes someone who is actually funny to make it work on the page. So when did you kind of realize that it was something you could do and it wasn't just your friends kind of feeling like bad for you?
Who knows? Maybe, no, I think I mean, like I know I keep banging on about Story Club, but that is such a there's no more immediate experience than reading a story out loud that is supposed to be funny and seeing if people laugh or not, and seeing what lands and what doesn't, and sometimes things that you thought were really funny, people don't seem to find funny, or things that you thought were just by the by, people find hysterical. And having that experience of like that immediate response to everything I was writing was really a really helpful feedback process. Not that you can, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. Like as I say, people are a bit drunk, and they want to be nice, but it does help. And I think also, a lot of the people who have been doing Story Club with us for the entire time, like we're all pretty like not hard on each other, but we're very critical and very like, we used to, we don't do it so much anymore, but we used to like go out afterwards and talk about every single story and what was funny and what wasn't, and how they could be better. And we very silly. I don't know why we took it so seriously, but we certainly did.
Well, it definitely paid off. I guess the other question I had was about, because your family is obviously kind of the main topic of the book almost. And one of the most poignant stories for me was when your father went to Wales to visit his mother. So I was just kind of wondering what their reaction was to these stories, whether you kind of asked them permission or whether you kind of thought, oh, I can just apologize after, or...
No, I did ask them permission. They're very aware of what I do, and I mean some of those stories have been aired on television, so they've kind of, I think, come through the entire process with me. Like they always come and notice that, but I definitely made them both my parents read it in advance. I was like, read this because and then it's your own problem. I was like, I'll take out anything you want, like anything you don't want out there, I'll take out, but you have to tell me. And there was only one thing that was like, the mum was like, you haven't, talking about someone in the book, like, you haven't changed their name, you've kind of identified where they live, you haven't changed anything about this, like this is 100% identifiable. And I was like, oh, that's a great call. So she was quite helpful in that way. But yeah, I think that they sort of like it. I think that they like being like, my mom's always like, oh, I'm a character in a book. So I'm very lucky that they have a great sense of humor about it. And I do think I'm the worst person in the book. So which is always great. Like, look, no one's worse than me. So
yeah, and in terms of writing yourself into the story, it kind of feels like you've created a character version of Zoe. Is that something that you felt you were doing consciously, or is it just when you're kind of being a bit self-deprecating, that's what naturally happens?
What do you? I guess I'm not really sure. I don't know if I did it. I certainly didn't consciously go through and think about what my character was. I think it's just more like trying to be pretty honest about how I'm feeling and what the world looks like from my perspective, whether that's told in like a slightly heightened or silly way or just kind of how it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad that came through, but I didn't have any particularly amazing strategy behind making myself a character.
Right, yeah, just kind of came through naturally. So then I guess from that, it's obviously a really honest book, but how much would you, I mean, it's a terrible question to ask someone, how much is fiction or nonfiction, or like how do you class yourself? But I guess what was the process like of creating these stories, and yeah, how much of it was just pure fact and how much did you have to tweak it?
Core of the book is real. So I didn't make anything up that I think is important. Like all the important stuff is real. The way I felt about it, everything is real. The way other people feel is I believe to be. And in terms of fictionalizing, I guess there were two sort of prong to not offend anybody or upset anyone, because that's the last thing I'd want to do. And the other being like just sometimes trying to find the best way that I thought I could tell a story might have meant dipping into something a little more fantastical or silly. But I think that sort of stuff is probably reasonably evident. My mother can't really fly, not to the best of my knowledge. Maybe she can, who knows.
Yeah, and so do you feel like that there's kind of a duty more to make sure you're not hurting people as opposed to being completely honest? I mean, where do you think there's a line where you would feel like a writer had gone too far in fictionalizing, or was that something you thought about?
Like as in, is it so far fictionalized that it doesn't mean anything anymore?
Yeah. Or I mean, is there a line where it's kind of you've like betrayed the reader or something?
I don't know. It's kind of that's a hard question. I guess, I mean, almost sincerely, because I was like, I kind of wanted to be pretty honest about what I was trying to do. So, I mean, I think that's the kind of thing everyone probably has to, if they're writing a story or a book, probably has to, do they feel like, or, what are they trying to do with the book, and do they feel like whatever level of fiction or truth is there is going to get whatever message they want across. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it is a hard one. I mean, like, obviously, if you're just literally writing down everything that happens and you're not allowing yourself any room to use your imagination or embellish or whatever, I mean, what are you doing? Like, what is it? I mean, even when people tell you stories, they're always bullshitting. Like, there's always elements of crap in there. So yeah, I mean, I suppose, like, if it was, if you were telling a story that was genuinely incriminating or, something like that. Like, okay, say for instance, the working on the checkout, you have to be very careful about that sort of stuff, because otherwise that's really bad, and you do have a very high level of responsibility to what you're doing, and you can't betray people for a number of reasons, like ethical, legal. Also, like, the whole point of it is to try to get to the bottom of these things. So yeah, I'm not sure if I really answered. I really hope I haven't betrayed my readers. I hope they don't feel betrayed. That's not what I meant.
Yeah, no, I don't feel betrayed, so that's at least one reader. No,
I'm so
I think that's a really good, interesting answer, in the contrast that you have to keep in mind that it's not like you set out to be a journalist in this case. It's yeah, and it is humorous. So I guess my next question would be on a slightly different track, which is just about humor writing and kind of the craft of it. Do you think it's something that you learned to do and had to make a conscious effort with, like, like some people talk about basic rules, I don't know, like using funny words, or is it something that you think was quite natural and intuitive?
I think it's a bit of a mixture. Like, I certainly didn't study how to do it like that. I mean, that would have been great. There was no course like that when I was studying writing. I think a lot of it is like, and certainly going through uni, I spent a lot of time with comedians and very, very funny people, and people who are very funny just to talk to. And I think you do just kind of you learn what's funny and what makes you funny, what makes you different to other people. And I think for me, a lot of humor comes in that not just being different, a little snowflake, like your own little particular perspective on something. If you can really drill down into that, that can actually just be quite funny. And it's about being surprised, being surprising. And for me, like I do really like playing with language, and I think it can be quite funny if just like it's you're talking about like what can you do to make those mundane events actually funny stories. And I think one thing is like try to find a way to express something that you've never heard before, but that yet evokes exactly the image that you'd like to share with someone. So I think that a lot of the time, when people have a big laugh at somebody at Story Club, a lot of just kind of turn over a stone a little bit, like it's a scene that you've seen before, but just to describe it in such a way that's like so unique, like that it's clearly come out of their own diseased mind, and uses turns of phrase that you would never think to use, but that yet kind of really nail it.
Yeah. And you were talking about earlier your mother flying and that story. So, I mean, that's obviously not true, but it is very funny. So do you think it's kind of the unexpected element in that, or just that's kind of how it feels?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, so the rest of that story is true. Like, the little sad little attack in the park is all true. And I think with that one, I sort of wanted to, like, give me and my mum like an opportunity to kind of relive that in the way that it should have happened, because she really did, like, for people who haven't read the book or that story, it's just a story about a time when these two girls who were older than me came into a park near my house, and one of them said, and they were being mean, and my mum, I lived at the house, and like ran down and chased them down the street and pulled them both back up, these two teenage girls who were bigger than her, and like sat them down on a park bench and called the cops. And it was actually amazing. Like, I'd never seen my mother run. She's like a crazy chain smoker, doesn't do a lick of exercise. Like, I've never seen her at the beach, like not her gig at all. And just to see that, like, it was one of those, like, the mother lifting the car to save the baby kind of moments. And I remember at the time being just astonished. And so I wanted to try to find a way to convey what that felt like, and to me, it was like, well, she was flying. Like, that's what it felt like to me. It was, So that's why I did that one. I'm glad it was funny, because it wasn't actually a tragedy. That story, it was fine.
Yeah, I think what comes through a lot anyway is that it feels like you're going with a feeling, and sometimes it's unexpected, and that really or it's almost like what you're feeling being so at odds with what's happening, and that's a lot of where the humor seems to come from. Yeah, anyway, my analysis. Yeah, but anyway, so I guess going back a bit, you talk a lot about in the book of kind of the process of growing up and all the odd jobs you had, and you were a skunk for a telco company. So how do you feel you kind of always intended to be a writer, and it was just a matter of kind of having a few funny experiences along the way, or was it something that kind of surprised you and kind of you fell into?
But I wanted to be an actor. I very much wanted to be a very serious actor. I thought I was very, very excellent at acting when I was younger. So that was kind of my goal. And when I was at uni, I was like doing all sorts of stupid plays at uni. And then one time I wrote one with a friend of mine, and we were like, oh, it's pretty funny. We think it's pretty good. And then we ended up starting a little theatre company, and we wrote our own plays and kind of did them around the place. They were very, but they were a bit silly. And so, yeah, I kind of, I don't know. I guess I always liked it, and I just think I got quite lucky. Like, I just kind of pursued it long enough that it ended up becoming a tenable career, which which has been amazing, even though it's nothing like what I expected. Like I never ever would have dreamed of doing political satire or talking about consumer affairs. Like I did not grow up being like I'm gonna do that. Not at all. But it's actually been great to sort of be open to doing something completely different to what you'd expect and learning to really love it.
Yeah. So in terms of advice for the young writers who are watching National Young Writers Month, do you think it's just a matter of trying a lot of different things, or just kind of, I don't know, figuring out a niche? Or
I think it's a matter of really, like, a dumb thing to say, but like just do as much as you can and always be amazing. Like you just don't know, you have no idea who's watching. Like you really don't. Like, like Story Club got picked up out of a little tiny bar where there was 20 people and also someone who could help us. Important. Like I think it's really important to let people know what you want. Like like I sort of asked for my first job. Like I was like, oh, actually, yeah, like were we talking about UTS before? I can't remember. But when I was editing the UTS anthology, I asked Dom Knight, who's one of the Chaser guys, to launch it for us, and ended up being paid and stuff. And then like about a year or so later, I was like, can I have a job? He was like, yeah. And I was like, that was a lot easier than I so opportunity, like you deserve. Like just ask for what you want, and there are so many awesome places to get published and seen, and it seems like, I feel like the young writing scene in Australia is really, really exciting. I used to manage the National Young Writers Festival a few years ago, and it was just amazing to me to just, how strong and supportive this network is. Like it really seems like if people do great things, everyone gets behind them, and yeah. So I think that would be my advice. And it's also like, I used to write my Story Club stories at a convenience store. Like I'd run from work to a convenience store, I'd bash out a story and run and do it, and it, and I loved it. I think it's important to. I don't want to get into the debate about whether you should do things for free, because I don't want to. There's so many elements to that. But for me, things for free, it was like, I would be so happy to do this for free because it's making me so happy. And I think if you, not to say that you shouldn't get paid, but like, why would anyone pay me for an event that I first started to read stories out loud? Like that was just something that we invented. So I think making sure that you always are loving it, like enjoy it, and wherever your money's coming from, if you can make ends meet, like I worked in a swimsuit store till I was almost 27. Like things can happen really quickly as well. So, and writers are like, oh God, I forgot what I was going to say then. But yeah, like things can happen very, very quickly. So, yeah, just keep trying, I would say.
yeah, that's nice, I think, compared to I don't know. Yeah, a lot of the time it feels like you're getting told to brand yourself, or I don't know. It's nice just to think you could walk up to Dom Knight and ask for a job and everything will be fine.
Walk up to him. It's just at the ABC. It's fine. Ask Dom for a job. That's my advice.
Oh no, that's great. So what do you think in terms of being able to translate theatre into it seems like theatre was the starting point, and that's kind of where everything came out of. But how do you feel like you're kind of in a comedy circle as well, or the writing circle, or they overlap, or because it seems like there's almost like two scenes going on at the moment?
Yeah, I think probably I'm a little bit more in a comedy circle at the moment, I guess. Like the Chaser run a theatre which does a lot of comedy called the Giant Dwarf Theatre, where we do story club, and there's a million other comedy things. So I guess sort of sorry, comedy, but I definitely there's definitely a lot of crossover. Like a lot of people who write books also do comedy shows, and a lot of people who do theatre also do stuff like story club. So yeah, I think there is some overlap. But if I had to say where I spend most of my time, it's definitely hanging out with mental comedians.
As opposed to mental writers, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you think as well it is kind of a particular type of person that is attracted to that world, or is it just, I mean, do you feel like you were innately meant to be a creative person, or was it more like a conscious choice that you made?
No, I don't think so. I think I think anybody could. I sort of think that the teacher, the only reason I didn't do teaching was because they wouldn't let me They wouldn't let me do a master's of teaching, specializing in drama, and I really want to teach drama, and they said that because I hadn't done something in my undergrad, I wasn't allowed to do it. So I was like, oh, well, screw that, I'm going to do writing. So that was just a sort of angry decision I made like 5 years ago for no real good reason. So yeah, and I always thought like my dad is an extremely funny person, and he's like a therapist, and he was a social worker for a very long time. And if he had decided to be a writer, he would have been amazing. I mean, thank God he's not. He has a much more important job where he's actually legitimately helping people. So yeah, I think I wanted to do it, and I was lucky that I was able to kind of, well, so far, I mean, I'm not that old. Like, who knows? I don't know when who knows when the curtain's going to come down. But yeah, so far, it's been fun.
Well, on that note, I guess we could wrap it up on the image of the curtain coming down. Was there anything else that you wanted to say to National Young Writers at the moment? I mean, or
good on you guys. Keep doing awesome stuff, and just make sure you keep enjoying yourselves. And it's a lovely, if very, very small and difficult industry that we have here, but you can make it work.
Well, I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, Zoe and Emily, for joining us tonight. If you want to find out a little bit more about our guests, you can jump onto Twitter. Zoe is at ZoeNL, ZoENL, and Emily is at Meller, EMMELLER. Sorry, that was very hard to get my tongue around as well. And if you missed the beginning of the broadcast, the whole conversation is now on YouTube, so jump online and catch up. So Express Media's National Young Writers Month is occurring throughout the month of June, both physically and virtually, like we are in Google Hangouts now. Tune in next Monday, the 15th, for Words and Pictures, a discussion with contemporary comics with Katie Parrish, Chris Gooch, and Paul Dalla Rosa, who are all fantastic. In the meantime, jump onto the Express Media website at expressmedia.org.au to keep up with the blogs, jump onto the hashtag NYWM15, and get yourselves along to a VoiceWorks launch. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.